Hello and welcome to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. Well, it looks like it might be time to start planning the open top bus parade. Liverpool moved 11 points clear at the top of the Premier League with a dominant win against Manchester City. And after Arsenal's limp defeat against West Ham, it looks like the title race is all over. On today's show, we'll debate just how good this Arne Slot team might be and assess the failings of City and Arsenal too. We'll discuss Tottenham's 3-match winning run, a 7-goal thriller at Newcastle and Crystal Palace's excellent away form, and discover who the most underrated player in the Premier League is. I'm Tom Clark, and joining me today we have the senior sports writer and Sunday Times columnist Alison Rudd, the football reporter who covers clubs in London and the south of England, it's Gary Jacob, and the former footballer turned journalist Gregor Robertson is here too. Alison, you're back.
Oh, hello.
Hi. So I've had 2 cups of tea. I'm really buzzed and ready for this show. You happy? Happy to be back? Missed us?
I missed you so much.
Missed us tremendously.
As I was swimming in the sea.
You were thinking, well, wonder what Tom and Gregor are doing.
Blanca in Lanzarote.
Oh, was it all inclusive? Were you all inclusive?
Here? Why am I here? I was thinking I'd rather be podcasting.
Oh, what a charmer. Gary, in the studio with us for the first time.
It's unbelievable. I'm like I said to you before, I've like an under 23 reserve team.
No,
called off the bench.
No, not at all.
This is like Spurs. You're sort of really going to the depths of the kind of who, so many people are injured
stunning
this morning.
Stunning performance on the transfer
action.
special that we did in January.
Yeah.
Had all the listeners going, get that guy back on. Get that guy back on. You also bring us a nice kind of balance with your glasses, which are a little bit kind of Tony Cascarino-esque.
Yeah, but as you know,
but not as big.
Yeah, but as you know, I sort of make typos, and the clincher was saying I was overheating in Coventry the other week.
Yeah.
Which you all laughed at.
No.
Which I apparently was meant to write overhearing.
Overhearing.
But obviously auto-corrected, and I didn't see it.
So you were overheat.
So the glasses is the way forward. I think.
Overheating.
So I can actually see the screen now.
They only work if you put a prescription in, Gary. Has no one told you that?
The overheating in Coventry.
Yeah, no one overheats in Coventry.
No, exactly. And Greg, it's just me and you again.
We're here.
Yeah, but you're glad these guys are here, aren't you?
Of course.
I've been sick of Hamza and Tony Cascarino and Tom Allnut and Pete Rutzler. Idiots. Never want to hear from them again. Thank God they're here. Anyway, the title's all over, guys. February, it's done and dusted. Anyone disagree?
No.
No, it's done, isn't it? Yeah. Done. Gary?
No, I agree.
It's done. Yeah. It's done. I don't want to dwell too much on this game, but I want to take out, in our usual Times podcasty way, the big picture things, the big metaphors, the big analogies from the game at the Etihad yesterday. But just very quickly on the game yesterday. Was it a case of Liverpool ruthless, City a little bit better, but ultimately floundering? Was this the tale of their 2 seasons encapsulated in 90 minutes, do you feel, Alison?
What it was about, I think, and I think this
Here we go.
This is critical. This is critical to how I think we will end up summing up Arne Slot's first season as Liverpool manager, is the amount of respect Liverpool showed City. And you might argue, of all the matches they've had and will have, it shouldn't really have been top of their list because of the state City are in. And yet honestly, Liverpool treated Man City as if they were proper rivals for the title. If you knew nothing about the table, you might have thought Liverpool were second, City were top in terms of approach, packing the midfield, ceding possession, being very concentrated, well drilled, calm. I was almost overwhelmed by the amount of respect on show, actually. And I think that, and I was sat next to one of my children who said, very impressive, Mum, rather boring. And I think that sort of sums up Liverpool's season slightly.
Drank the Kool-Aid, lads, honestly.
The
Rudd family still can't get on board with one of the best teams in the Premier League.
There are these long periods where it isn't a thrill, and then you get periods where they break, or they do a set-piece corner kick, copying Bournemouth. And and it is scintillating and clever, and you think, wow. But for the most part, this was really grown-up, mature football. And that is how you win a title. And that is how you win a title.
There's like a sort of undertone of disdain when you say that. It's like, does football have to be a thrill a minute?
Well, it
should come and watch some of the games in League One.
God,
it's not a thrill anymore, I'm telling you. It was brilliant at times, wasn't it? It's
at times. But
is that not enough?
I'm giving them a huge compliment. I think to be top of the table.
Doesn't sound like it, does it?
To be top of the table and go to a club that is in a crisis and treat them with so much respect, I think shows the depth of thought and planning that goes into every single minute of football.
But there's still a little bit of sort of weariness about City's crisis, I think, from most of their opponents.
You still think what? You think,
Well, they
let's not give them an inch because they might,
They still think there might come a moment where they go boom, and
But I
like
thought
they
they
did
were
against Newcastle.
But I thought they were good in
Or like
parts.
they did for an hour against Real Madrid.
They created chances that might have been a slightly different game.
I thought City were good. I agree with Gary. I thought
Oh,
they
they
weren't
had cutting edge.
great. No, they weren't great. But they were missing Erling Haaland. But there were times when in the first half, as Gary says,
Yeah.
do you agree?
I think they started off quite well at the start, and then they had a couple of other opportunities. Maybe they kind of the final pass was better, or the final shot would have been a slightly different game. But it reminded me a bit of the sort of the Arsenal game last year, where Arsenal parked the bus and got the 0-0 at City, sort of just packed it. But Arsenal couldn't do what Liverpool did, was break and then score the goals. And sort of, I don't know if that was I mean, they were very impressive, Liverpool, and sort of just two banks of four, or bank of 4 and 5. It was so impressive.
And you flagged
33.9%.
Gary flagged this stat last night. 33.9% possession for Liverpool, the lowest in a Premier League victory on record.
No recognised striker on the pitch. But it worked.
Yeah,
it worked. It's a means to an end. Like there've been other games where they've.
It's 2-0 to the
dominated
Liverpool, isn't it? It's 2-0 to the Liverpool. That's what they've beaten Manchester City twice. 2-0.
It's always my predicted score for a Liverpool game.
Yeah,
City's Achilles heel is still when they're when they're dominating, when they're high up the pitch, it's exploiting the space in behind, and Liverpool have the players to do that, and that's that's kind of how they got the second goal.
Yeah. So, but you just quickly on City, because we've talked a lot about City, Gregor. You don't necessarily agree with me and Gary that there were signs here of a few of the players looking quite bright. Marmoush playing well.
Yeah, Marmoush looks like he'll be a player for them, absolutely. But fundamentally, there were like toward the last 20 minutes. Really, they were never really getting close to Liverpool, and I still think there's a big overhaul needed.
Yeah.
I think they need to be on the money on several new recruits, which there's no guarantee of. And there's some who are coming and have been there a while, and you're just not entirely sure. Like Doku, you think you could have gone past Trent Alexander another 20 times, and you're still not sure whether he'd put in a cross that would have picked out a man in the box. And you give Liverpool some credit for that, but I still think his final ball was really poor. And other players like De Bruyne, Kovacic when he comes on.
Well, I want to talk about De Bruyne in a minute based on Paul Hurst's piece that is on the Times website, and Mo Salah. But then coming back to Liverpool then, how good do we think this Liverpool side are? Because that's the subject of our colleague Martin Samuel's digital column on the website this morning, this debate around this title race this season. Is it Liverpool brilliance? Is it that other teams have not challenged them? And we'll come on to Arsenal in a minute. Gary, you cover Arsenal a lot for us. Alison, you were there on Saturday. But just talking about Liverpool, how good is this team? I think they're brilliant. I would say that because I said they were brilliant at the start of the season when none of you would listen that they were going to win the title. But I really admire this ruthlessness, Alison, that you are picking out. I think that's incredibly brilliant way of winning in any sport, to be able to be lots of different things.
Of course.
In modern football as well, no? In modern football, where we're talking so much about Ange and Amorim and all these people who only have one way.
Yes.
Arnie says, my way is winning.
Yeah, I think if you were to put me on a psychiatrist's couch, what he would discover is that there's an element of...
You miss the Jurgen Klopp still.
Slots come in and heavily tweaked what was there and made it more successful, which therefore implies that Klopp wasn't being successful enough, which is a sad thing to
Can you not divorce those two things though? If I'm being your psychiatrist now, you can enjoy Jurgen Klopp for what it was, and it was a thriller minute, and it was maybe should have won a few more things, but Christ, he run Man City close a couple of times, and he won that league title and the Champions League, and that was brilliant. And put a full stop in it and go, and we love Arnie too for being ruthless and 2-0 to the Liverpool.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we're in danger of forgetting what Slot inherited compared to what Klopp inherited.
That's all right. Doesn't matter.
That's a long time ago.
But it was so different. It was
absolutely, and it's a process.
Entirely dispiriting era under Brendan Rodgers.
What you're saying is you want the open top bus. You want Jurgen on the bus, is what you're saying.
I think he's.
Is that what you're saying? Do you want him driving the bus?
I don't know how we keep coming back to.
Neither do I, Gregor. But
I don't know how it happens.
Gary, you've first appearance on the pod. Lay the smack down. Tell Alison, your colleague you've worked with a long time. Tell her she's absolutely bonkers.
You want to see a bit more flamboyance, do you? I mean, I think you're probably right. In the times I've seen Liverpool this season, they're efficient without being flamboyant. I haven't gone, wow, they're an amazing
They don't make
team.
your heart flutter quite
They
so
don't
much.
make the heart
Have you not? I go
and
wow
Not quite
all
so
the
much.
time.
Not quite so much.
Salah does, and things he does, you think are quite amazing, but the rest of the team feels very efficient. I saw against Brentford recently, where they got fortunate at the end with a couple of goals. Even against Arsenal, when they drew, it sort of didn't play particularly well. And I think they're not quite sort of the Man City sort of flamboyance of a few years ago.
Listeners should know that Gary and Alison have worked together a very long time, and there's a bit of
I'm
buddying up going on. I'm going to have to separate you around this table. I'm not having it.
Yeah,
I'm not having it. I honestly think we're in a stage where maybe, Gregor, this Liverpool team's going to end up being one of the most underrated title winners ever if we keep this going.
Yeah.
This is bonkers. Like, as Mo Salah is absolutely brilliant. We'll come on to talk about him in a second. Virgil van Dijk is putting in one of the most colossal performances of the season at the back. And also, in terms of thrillingness, and maybe this is my Football League grounding, Gregor, and you see if you agree with me, some of their midfield play, the way Gravenberch and Szoboszlai just absolutely boss the midfield, that's exciting to me. The way they just physically dominate a midfield at times, win the ball back, turn the ball over, and start, there was a moment, I can't remember, I think it was in this City game where City cleared the ball, and it was like an army piling back at them from midfield and defence. They just swarmed back at them. That's incredibly thrilling to me. If I was a fan, I'd be like, this is great. Gregor?
Look, I'm with you, Tom. I also admire the way that they can defend the box. Like, I enjoy watching football like that. I thought it was one of the best games of the season, the Arsenal City game, because it was engrossing seeing this team, like, down to 10 men, packing the box, defending, like, the 6-yard box.
This is the last game last season that Gary mentioned.
The 2-0 in
Yeah.
September.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the 2-0.
Yeah.
And like, this wasn't that extreme, but there were periods of the game where they did that, and City were like, it was like watching late era Wenger ball, where they just keep knocking it around outside the box. But you think, go on, guys, do that if you want. They didn't have the cutting edge, and they couldn't break them down. I think I admire that. I admire that organisation and discipline from players who are like superstars. So the defensive work Salah did, that's hugely admirable, and he needed to, because Trent couldn't defend against Doku.
Even little things like Andy Robertson coming back into the team, and I say this as someone who took him out of his fantasy team because I thought he was finished and Tsimikas was going to play all the time. He come back into the team and playing well again. After a period where I thought he was going to be added to your list, and he might still be, Gregor, of players that are just slightly on the turn and legs have gone and things. But he's come back into the team recently. That's brilliant, isn't it? And that for him, having been there so long, having, all the failed attempts under Jurgen Klopp, he's finally going to get that second title.
The thing that like kind of speaks to Alison's point is that this game has often been wacky and mental down the years between when Jurgen Klopp and Pep were going head to head, and like great fun, but who knew who was going to win it? So it's you can see the logic in Slot coming in and saying, I'm not getting involved in that. Yeah. Why wouldn't we kind of play the
2-0,
the percentages here?
Brilliant.
We know what their weakness is, and it's one of our strengths. Why don't we play this way? And it worked, and that's why they'll win the league. That's one reason among many that they'll win win the league.
Alison, are you prepared to consider that this team might be as good as some of Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool sides, or can you not even countenance that from the psychological point of view and the challenge and the trauma that it might cause?
No, I think they're probably more effective, but they're not as much.
You had the
don't
word.
Bring as much joy.
You had the word "better" on your lips. Then I could see it. I could actually see it. You very nearly said the word "better."
There was a stat this morning, something like.
Oh God, Alison's doing stats, Gregor. This never happens.
If you take away the goal involvements of Mo Salah, Liverpool would be 16th or something.
So what?
Oh come on.
But
you do that with every team.
No,
Cristiano Ronaldo for Manchester United.
I think that is slightly over-reliant on one player, isn't it?
But isn't he brilliant that he's getting the best out of
him?
him?
If you take Virgil van Dijk and Mo Salah out of the team, they start losing to Plymouth Argyle. That's a worry.
I mean, we can talk about that game.
She's trolling the fan base.
I think you're doing it on purpose. Is this because of Lanzarote? Did you just have a bad holiday? Come on, what's going on here? This is ridiculous. Gary, where would you put...
Too many pastries.
Yeah, too many pastries. Where would you put this Liverpool team then? Because, as I say, I'm bringing it back to the debate that Martin Samuel, as I say, on the website is putting forward, that, and we're going to talk about Arsenal in a second, and rival fans will be saying, this is, it's one of those walk-away titles. Liverpool have just been a bit more ruthless than other teams. I think they're honestly one of the best. They could be one of the best title winners of the last 10 years.
Really?
Yeah. I think they would give any of Jurgen Klopp's sides a really good game, and they might be better than them because of the efficiency and ruthlessness. And I think he has shown against any opponent a willingness to adapt and produce and get results in lots of different moments, rotate the squad. I also think he'd have given Pep's best teams a really good game and a really good go. Silence around the table again for another podcast.
It's an interesting argument because there's no way of
there's no way of knowing, which is what Martin Samuel's argument is.
It's an interesting piece too, and it also goes on to talk about the strength of the league, which is another interesting debate. He was talking about how many points teams that were relegated in the seasons where they got like close to 100 points, like Cardiff went down with like 34 points. The bottom three are on track to be the worst on record. Yeah. They were again like they were last season. So there's a big gulf between the standard of those teams and in the past relative to the rest of the league. But I think that means that the rest of the league has improved.
Yeah, that middle bunch. Now we're going to talk about them in the second half of the show. Yeah.
So while that means that not necessarily being any of them that were actually going to challenge Liverpool and put pressure on them, the standard of the league is better overall, I think.
Yeah.
So, it's nuanced, that kind of discussion. But going head-to-head with City and the Liverpool teams of the past...
Go on, you've been on my side the whole time, Gregor. Don't abandon me now.
It might have been a bit more interesting had the gap got smaller to see what they're actually made of in those difficult circumstances, like you were saying. I think that would be the interesting thing.
Yeah.
Had Arsenal won, had that gap, had then something happened differently yesterday, then you got an idea of how resilient they are mentally as well.
I mean, Slot pointed out after the game, it was only a few days ago after the Villa game, where you saw what the points gap could drop to, and everyone thought, is this the wobble? So they I know they didn't quite get into a full-scale wobble or test of their credentials, but there have been and with the Plymouth game was the first sign of a kind of little wobble.
And the Everton drop points, whatever. They were unfortunate.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing. Let's see if we can agree on one thing. Mo Salah, he's quite good, isn't he, Alison? You can at least agree with me on that.
He's a little bit too good.
Mo Salah is the only player in the Premier League history to be directly involved in 40-plus goals in more than one season, having done so in 2017, 18. So there you go. There's your theory about being carried by one player. He did it before. And the current campaign, 41, 25 goals, 16 assists. Salah is the first player in the Premier League history to score an assist in both games against the reigning champions in a single campaign, doing it in the big games when it matters. And Mo Salah has both the most goals and most assists of any player against sides managed by Pep Guardiola in his top-flight managerial career. Is Mo Salah having one of the best seasons we've ever seen of any player in Premier League history, Alison?
Absolutely. And this is his best season for Liverpool because not only are his stats astonishing, and I believe without him in the team, they can be quite ordinary, relatively ordinary. He makes a huge difference. We're seeing him as a person for the first time, really. He's spoken more than he normally speaks. He's sort of accepted that he's a mature member of the team and he has a role to play in making the younger members feel that they need to be encouraged. There's an openness to him, a generosity of spirit. I don't know if you remember, but there was a period where people would mutter, Mo Salah's a bit selfish. It could have passed there. And now you see him, and he hasn't lost any of that instinct to someone who wants to score a goal and putting the thought of the chance first. But you can almost see his brain thinking, maybe it would be better if I offloaded this ball, or I can see the ball through here. And it's more generosity of spirit and less of the ego. So if you contrast that with the background of his contract talks, I think most people would have assumed if you put that all into a pot, you might have seen a brilliant but slightly sulky Mo Salah, one that felt a bit distant and a great talent, but not one you could warm to necessarily. But his demeanour he's just adds to that, making him a joy to watch. And also, I've seen him so many times in games where Liverpool have looked like they're struggling to make that breakthrough, and you think, where's the goal coming from? The opposition seem to have, cut out the supply chain. It looks a bit stodgy, and he always turns up, either with an assist or a goal, usually both, in the most unlikely way. And you only do that, and often in the sort of second half of the second half, you only do that by what he does is he weighs up the match, and he weighs up who's doing what and who's tiring and where the space is going to be. So his levels of concentration are astonishing for someone of his age. He's just the ultimate player. In fantasy terms, why he's a midfielder, goodness knows, but it's fantastic, isn't it?
Yes, we'll come on to fantasy football in the second half of the show because I've got some things to get off my chest. But he should just leave now, shouldn't he, Mo Salah? Sod the contract, just win the Champions League, win the league, best season ever, walk off with a big bucket of cash to Saudi Arabia. Alison? Just trying to cause you more emotional torture.
But everything I've just said points to someone who would hate it in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
So,
yes, and we'd be sad to see him go. Gregor, I wanted to quickly ask you about another great piece on the Times website by our colleague Paul Hurst about another great player who's having a different season to Mo Salah, Kevin De Bruyne. His kid's contract is also up. Been talking with Paul Hurst and Gary as well, offer your view on this. You're kind of looking like it might be a farewell for De Bruyne, don't we think? A few weeks ago, put in a few good performances, and Paul Hurst and I were saying, you kind of give him one more year, belief that he maybe wants to stay in Manchester. You're looking at it, if you're Pep Guardiola and Manchester City and thinking about this rebuild, games like this, you go, he's not quite at it for the level that we need him to be. And that's maybe not his fault. It's about the players that are around him as well, manage, decline, etc., blah, blah, blah. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Thursday put in his piece, it's kind of, if he's happy to stay and be a bit part player, which he indicates that he is, and take a massive drop in his £400,000 a week contract, then of course you would still have him. And he's like by all accounts, he's got a really good relationship with Pep.
Yeah,
and he'd be a big figure to have around the place, and he would still, I'm sure, have some really telling moments in games, like coming off the bench, getting in those little half spaces and putting those crosses in. You can still do all that, but City are so dysfunctional at the moment. Dysfunctional is a bit strong, but there's no protection. There's no legs.
Yeah,
it's not. So when he's not the only one, it kind of illuminates it even more. If he's in a team with a bit more energy and dynamism, he could still offer something, undoubtedly. Yeah. But it's all down to him. Willing to accept that.
So used to watching him pick up the ball in midfield and just drive forward, and it was just stuck. It was stuck to his feet, wasn't it? And then he would play the right pass, or he would cut inside and cross. And you think, how's he got that angle? And he's hit Haaland's head. And when was the last time you saw that?
Yeah,
I think it's a little bit sad in a way, really, because I mean, he clearly is such a talented player. As Hursty writes, every team respects him. Every fan respects him, regardless of who you support, because he's such a good player, and he's carried City, and he's a very respectful player. And it is a bit sad, really.
Yeah, which is another reason why Mo Salah should just walk off into the sunset after this season. Anyway,
but I agree with Gary. I mean, they should keep him, because the players
would keep him. Interesting,
even just for his knowledge, around the place. And
you'd want to give him a pay cut for just knowledge, though, I reckon. He's got a lot of knowledge. I'm not sure it's worth 400 grand a week. Anyway, we must move on. Manchester City's downfall this season, obviously one of the reasons that Liverpool are walking their way to the title. The other reason for the bus parade being booked in was Arsenal's defeat against West Ham. Gary and Alison, I want to talk to you about Arsenal. Alison, first from you. You were at the game, and you've written a piece in the game today and on the website about the day the title race died. What happened?
It was utterly bizarre. I mean, initially I thought it must just be the weather, because it's suddenly very mild and it felt like April, which means...
Again, I feel this is Lanzarote based, but anyway.
But it was a bizarre weather day. So I couldn't really explain why the mood on the pitch and in the stands, everyone acted as if the title race was over before they kicked off. And it must have been because of the weather, because it felt like April. So if you're 8 points behind in April, title race is over.
We've missed you, Alison. We really have.
I reckon that had something to do with it. It just felt like they'd all been fast forwarded into a world where they just couldn't catch Liverpool. In footballing terms, they started poorly, and lo and behold, who knew this could happen? But West Ham sniffed that out very quickly, that they weren't at it. And almost in an instant, West Ham became this calm, poised, confident team. They were enjoying this sense of disconnect at Arsenal and played with absolute... I mean, they didn't... A bit like Liverpool and Man City. They didn't have a lot of possession, but they still looked in control. It's funny how you can do that, isn't it? You can have under 40% possession, but still look like you're the one dictating the tempo.
Would you say that's happened with Arsenal a lot this season? Because you could make that... you saying that reminded me of the Fulham game at Fulham, where maybe Arsenal had more of the ball, but are you watching it going, Fulham are ones who are controlling this game.
Yeah, I think it's about the opposition sensing that has happened.
That they've got Arsenal here. We've got this under control.
They're not going to
keep the ball,
reach
lads.
the vibe
Pass.
Yeah,
you're not going to score
happen.
here.
So there was just one really good piece of football in the game from Arsenal, and really they're a team we expect to do beautiful things regularly, but they didn't. It was bizarre how this off the pace they were, and couldn't find a way into it at all. So they had everyone being slightly sluggish, Trossard being the only one who's looked like, hang on, guys, there's a title race going on. He was running around, trying really hard to make something happen, but he couldn't do it on his own. And so you had this incredible contrast. I just didn't see coming, even though Graham Potter has a fantastic record at the Emirates.
Yeah.
He's won 4 out of his 5 games there. So I tried to get him to say that's why he went there confident, because it plays for no fear for him, but he wouldn't say that, although he did reminisce a little bit about his games. But it was, and I wish I'd made Graham Potter my assistant manager in fantasy football, because. But the reason I didn't was.
We'll talk about fantasy football in a minute, Alison. I promise.
The reason was, I just couldn't see how an Arsenal team, seemingly in a title race, could be out-thought and out-vibed by a West Ham team struggling to find their identity under a new manager who seemed to be struggling to impose an identity on the team. Boy, oh boy, they just wallowed in that surprising lack of energy from Arsenal.
Gary, listening to Alison there talk about this game in isolation, what do you think about some of the points she's made there with the season as a whole?
I think it's the bigger picture has been struggling to break down small teams. Drew at home to Everton, Fulham away, drop points. I think there's a season regret. The bigger picture is a season regret. Starting off last summer with not signing another forward, signing depth in terms of Calafiori and Marino, but perhaps not quality, not those little players that make a difference, which was one of the big aims of the summer to make. After they lost at Bayern in the Champions League, it was like, we need to get someone who can be an elite player, someone who can actually take us to the next level. And actually what they got depth, which is fine because they've needed that, but they didn't get the real killer players. And I think you've seen that from the start of the season. You've seen the Brighton one, you've seen that little spell before Christmas, and they've never really got going. They've never had any momentum. They find it difficult against low blocks, and I think, as Alison said, West Ham played that way, and lots of teams now play that way. And unless they get an early goal, where's the goal coming from? A set piece or a corner? And that's been the story of their season. Okay, he's got injuries at the moment, but then they've got to find a way through it. Really, I was a little bit surprised by him starting Marino in that role, because I thought it worked as a substitute, and so we put it in the paper a couple of weeks ago. It might go that way, but at starting it's a little bit more obvious. And against a team like West Ham, they've got 3 centre backs. I think they probably needed a bit cuter. And I think there are little things that I think Arteta's team has evolved over the last couple of years, but in a way that they've become a lot more structured and a lot more predictable. They haven't got that little player who can make a difference, who can do something completely unexpected. Odegaard at times can do it, but they're still within a playbook framework. And I think what they need is a player who can do something you don't expect, because that's what they haven't got.
So Arsenal fans will be listening to that, probably a lot of them agreeing with you, absolutely every word you're saying. What they'll then want to know is, will this come in the summer then? Is the space there? Because as Arteta and as Arsenal, you'll be looking at the Premier League now and going, well, City are going to go through a period of change. Liverpool are the ones we've got to chase. Are they going to make those kind of signings? Are they going to do that kind of business?
It's a question of whether have they got the money to do it in the context of perhaps not being able to sell players that they might have sold. And the accounts last week suggested that the Champions League is very important to them, which is kind of obvious. And they've probably got firepower to do it, and the owners would do it. But I think it's a question: can they identify the right players? And also, does Mikel want those type of players? Because if we look at it, Mikel has actually got a team of boys who sit in the front row in the class, not someone who sits in the back row and causes trouble, but does something a bit
throws paper aeroplanes.
And as one of the other reporters of the paper says, he's got a team of son-in-laws,
right? Basically,
which is quite a nice description, because they're all good boys. There's no real nasty one there. But do you need a sort of player who's a little bit nasty, or do you just need a player who can who you accept.
Do you mean nasty within their own group, though? Because a lot of people would be saying, "Oh, they've had lots of red cards and things,
So
and they can be win it ugly." But you mean like within their own
within
group?
Within the group, yeah. And also, I don't think. I think on the red card thing, I don't think they're a particularly dirty team. What they are is a team that actually has a lot of tactical fouls, and I think Saturday was a sort of quite an example of that. You know, it was a tactical foul, and he's got it wrong. So in the same with sort of. You could argue the same for Declan Rice at the start of the season when he was sent off for kicking the ball away, and I know Arsenal fans will kind of go against that, but Dec probably knew what he was doing. Trossard probably knew what he was doing. So, and I think the question is will Mikel, and I think Johnny Norcroft has written a few pieces on this and the way the football's going, will Mikel change his style to adapt and willing to have that type of player who's not in that same framework, so that, you know, will he do it? And so maybe 1 week he's 5 out of 10, but next week he's 8 out of 10, and actually he plays a pass that no one sees, and you know, something that, like Alison says, Salah can do. I'm not sure if Arsenal have got that type of player.
Well, they've got Odegaard and Saka, who are obviously brilliant, but they're not quite at Mo Salah's levels this season. Of course, is it down to
Saka
simple as
probably
that?
will in time, possibly will be at Salah's levels, you know, but. I think, you know, look at the way Martinelli's perhaps gone flattened over the last few years. You know, is that him? Is that kind of the system? Is that the way Mikel plays him? There's lots of little questions you can have about that. And so I think they need to kind of have a bit of a kind of reset this summer on the squad, and also about the way they want to play.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. Gary said, how many times have set pieces bailed Arsenal out or changed the dynamic of a game like this? And, you know, meant the other team has to come out, and then that opens up more space and opportunities for them. It happened the other way around in this game. West Ham took the lead and they had something to hold on to. But they're no doubt their attack has become much more kind of functional and I don't know, like clunky.
Less fun. Less fun.
Yeah, it's like always working the ball out wide to try and create overloads, or you'll find the wide man cutting inside to play an in-swinging cross. You know, it's kind of percentage football, and the percentages often like work out. But I think Arsenal need a bit more. I feel like they could do a bit more pace as well. Like I know Martinelli's not playing. I know Saka, when he's playing, adds pace. Havertz isn't really someone who's a flyer. It's like I feel like they could do a bit more dynamism in their front forward line.
There was a lack of dynamism when they were defending the goal. I don't know if you saw it, but I've not. I mean, Wan-Bissaka. I felt a bit sorry for Wan-Bissaka's career trajectory. He was so lauded at Crystal Palace, and then going to Man United didn't really work for him.
And he was a winger.
Yeah, exactly. Now he's back playing wing back, and he had great fun running up and down. But he had the ball for so long on the touchline up against Calafiori, and it was like having so much fun he almost didn't want to pass, because it was just having a nice time. And then eventually he passed, and not one Arsenal player seemed to notice that Jared Bowen he hadn't even run very fast. He sort of jogged into the area. No one noticed him. One of the worst defended goals I've seen all season live, anyway.
That is perhaps the most damning thing you could say for Mikel Arteta, isn't it?
I think one of the most damning is the fact that Arteta actually had a go at them after the game, because he's generally quite supportive of them. Yeah. And I can think of very few occasions where he's actually criticised his players. One of them was losing to Brighton a few years ago, and they lost 3-0 at home. That virtually cost them the title, or chance of catching City. And then this is one of the other occasions he's actually had a go at them, and I think that kind of is quite telling, really. Yeah. And I think maybe it probably has shown him about a couple of them about what happens this summer if he can kind of turn the wheel and turn the cycle on a few of them.
Yeah, interesting times. More fun needed for Mikel Arteta, but plenty of fun for Aaron Wan-Bissaka. That's a nice little note for West Ham to get in there. And we're having a lot of fun on this podcast as well. Gregor could see that link coming a mile off, but it's time for a break, which means it's time for the quiz question, when I'm going to ask, who am I talking about when I say a former footballer who played as a striker for Manchester United, Chelsea, Southampton, Everton and Blackburn, and played for two of Europe's biggest clubs. Nice and easy. Find out after the break. Welcome back to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. I'm Tom Clark, and I've got Gary Jacob, Alison Rudd and Gregor Robertson with me. Huge controversy, guys. Huge. Massive. Massive. It's finally happened.
Listeners, you decide who's at fault here.
We've double dropped. We've double dropped on the quiz question. The answer was...
Mark Hughes.
Which
I couldn't get because I knew I'd asked that same question 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, when I was on my sick bed
When
dying.
you should have listened.
And I didn't listen to the one show that I didn't do. I didn't realise you'd already done Mark Hughes. I've got a draft email in my emails called Former Footballer Who with the full list, and I didn't have Mark Hughes on it because I didn't listen to that one bloody show. What else did I miss?
You've
Was
made
it
a
good?
boob there.
Yeah.
You've made a boob there.
But can I just also clarify for listeners that you didn't get your answer to your own question?
Well, how could I get it?
I listed the same facts about a player you'd already talked about a few weeks ago.
Yeah, but I knew I couldn't pick him.
What do you mean you couldn't? You could still give the answer. Sat
Okay,
in
that's
silence.
enough. We'll discuss this afterwards.
Sat in silence. Anyway, thank God Gary was here because Gary got the
No,
answer.
I think Alice on at the same time.
No,
as
you
me,
don't have to be so nice, Gary. It's fine. Much better when we fall out. Anyway, the reason I was using Mark Hughes was that I was going to mention the EFL podcast, Gregor.
I had the same idea. I just got a job.
Anyway, it's all good publicity. EFL show this week coming out as well. Me and Gregor falling out. I'll make sure I don't pick the same player on the quiz question this time. Anyway, good. That was smooth, wasn't it? Premier League with Newcastle. Wow, football. Anyway, let's get back to it. Newcastle United move into 5th with a 4-3 win against Nottingham Forest. A bonkers game. Absolutely bonkers. Great fun. I was speaking to Martin Hardy, who's covering this game beforehand, and I was saying that as a man who kind of grew up falling in love with football in the 90s, Newcastle United against Nottingham Forest kind of evokes those early years of watching Match of the Day, those good old kits, the Mitre football, Steve Stone, Ian Wone, Les Ferdinand. And so it proved. 4-3, absolutely crackers. Don't want to dwell on this too much because we've got loads to discuss in the second half. Greg, I wanted to start with a question for you. There's a question I've asked about Nottingham Forest a few times, and you've staunch in your support for your former club. We've had a few listeners getting in touch since the last few shows where you've been going, no, the slide's not happening, the slide's not happening. Few listeners getting in touch with me saying, tell Gregor the slide is happening. It's happening. Tell him. So this is me telling him.
It's looking a bit greasy, the slide.
Yeah.
I actually think that 2 of the goals they were a little bit unfortunate about.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because the Murillo went across the cover. Look, Newcastle worked the space brilliantly down that kind of left channel in this game. And Isak's little kind of, when he collected the pass and then sort of back-heeled it into the path, I think it was Lewis Hall.
Yeah.
But Murillo was raced across, covered, made himself big, deflection, looked over the keeper, Murphy back post. That was unlucky. And then the same thing happened for Isak's goal.
A great finish from Murphy, though, you have to say. You could see him
he's
sliding in. He was like, oh, my God, I can't use my feet. What do I do? He nearly handballed it at one point. He was like, oh, God, right, I'm going to have to go with my hip here.
Yeah.
Classic finish. Brilliant.
And I again, like Isak's, they did well to work the space, but it deflected over the goalkeepers. I think there was a bit of misfortune there. And as there was a good line in Martin Hardy's report that was like, Newcastle had the control at 1-0 down and then handed it over to Forest at 4-1 up. It was a weird game in that way. The scoreline shifted the momentum completely. Forest's goal came out of nowhere as well because Newcastle started really well.
Yeah.
And Hudson-Odoi pressed Murphy brilliantly, good finish. And then Newcastle were superb in the first half, outstanding.
This is Gary, by the way, just to introduce you as one of Gregor's political answers, where he's talked very eloquently and analytically about the game and not answered my question at all. Is the Nottingham Forest slide happening, Gregor?
No, I still think no.
No. That's all right.
I
You're
still
allowed
think
to think
no.
no. I slightly
think
agree
it was a
with
flurry,
you.
and as I say, those 2 goals were unlucky, and there was a flurry of Newcastle were brilliant in the first half. And then Forest.
They were excellent in the second half.
And
Forest
they
could easily have got a point. Well, there you go, listeners. Keep hammering away at him. We'll get him to concede eventually once Forest drop out of the European places, which we don't want to happen, Forest fans. We don't want that to happen. But I'm going to use this game to also talk about fancy football, Alison. Fancy football. Newcastle. I really like Newcastle. Great team. Good to watch. Alexander Isak, great player. Wonderful midfield. I'm turning against them, though. Eddie Howe, you've let me down. I backed them to the hilt against Bournemouth. Hall in the team. Murphy in the team. Isak in my team. Completely bottled it. Kirkez on the bench. I think he scored in a 4-1 win. Points galore on my bench. This game, I was like, Forest, tricky. Newcastle, not sure. Murphy on the bench. Hall on the bench. I've had it. I've had it enough. 16 points wasted this week on my bench, Alison.
You need to, but your approach is all wrong.
Oh, here we go. Crap, I'm getting a right kicking today.
But you're presumably taking a points hit for making so many transfers.
No.
You can't make that many transfers. Just keep going like that.
No, it was not transfers. I'm just saying I've had them in my team the whole time, but I'm picking them for their wrong games.
Okay.
I'm giving them the chance.
You need to have faith in your original logic and stick with players.
No, because they're
Gary, what's going on here?
disproving.
Is this a fantasy football podcast now?
Listen, do you know, Gary? Don't bail him out because I'm teeing this up for a reason. Just to bring back, we've not mentioned it for a while. The league, I'm actually doing okay. 77th in the Game Podcast Fantasy League. Alison, 30th.
Oh, I was 20th the other minute.
30th out of 352. Gary,
good.
the reason Gregory's wanting us to move on is that he is 351, I think, out of 356. Still got Kai Havertz in his team. Sort it out. Put a bit of effort in, you lazy bastard. Come on. We've turned now. It's gone.
Okay.
We've gone. Mark Hughes has
Speak to you
divided us. Anyway, big congratulations to Willis Bennett and Ben Topless, who are keeping the Times pride alive in 14th and 17th. But Carl Weeks is top and miles clear, doing a Liverpool running away with it. Anyway, let's move on. Enough? You had that?
Yeah,
Just a little bit of fun. You know, we're all right.
How
We're
many
allowed
people below you, Gregor?
6.
Doesn't seem like many, yeah.
Only 6.
Only 6.
Only 6.
I'll have more transfers left than anyone.
Yeah, but make some. Come on. Come on. This is your Ange Postecoglou moment. It's time to turn it around.
Yeah, it's too late.
Speaking of Ange
You could just put a
Postecoglou.
bunch of forwards in there, couldn't you?
Yeah.
No.
That's not how it works. That's not how it works, Gary. Anyway, speaking of Ange Postecoglou, let's talk about Tottenham. A 3rd win on the trot. Proof that on this podcast, we do not just talk about teams when they are in a low moment. Glenn Ebry, of course, the Glennometer is back. He said this morning, big Tottenham fan on our production desk, says this is it. He's got the season now. Proved them right. Gary, you were at this game. I want to ask first how Ange was after the game, because we've talked so much about Ange.
Obsessed with
We
how
are
Ange was
obsessed
after
with
the
how
game.
Ange was. The Ange moodometer. How was he?
Has he dropped his accent yet?
No, he was in a good mood and
Happy to see you, presumably, rather than Tom Allnutt for a change.
Well, I suppose we're not quite as we're also sort of. I'm a bit more of an outsider on the Tottenham patch,
Exactly.
so therefore I kind of asked slightly different questions to what the regulars asked. But yeah, no, he was in a good mood, and I think he's justified in saying that now that he's got options to have off the bench and depth and changes he can make. That they can actually show what he kind of show. But I think and with respect to kind of other Tottenham fans or whatever, I don't think anyone's going to think 3 games have suddenly made their season. I mean, one's Man United, which I don't know what that actually means. One's Ipswich, which the first 15 minutes they were all over the place, and even for the first half. So I think that they've now got City coming up. They've got Fulham, I think maybe Bournemouth is the 3rd. So let's see kind of what they've kind of make in those games actually of kind of, and also they still look, various players in the team look completely knackered. And Kulusevski, as you said, Tom, absolutely brilliant goal, but looks completely knackered. So he's still going to have to do a bit of juggling around, but you would hope in maybe a month's time he's going to have everyone back and.
Which is his point.
Which is his point.
That's why I think the 3 games is significant, because he had a few players back, and so it's a little tease. I agree with you about the opponents, but actually it's a little suggestion that he's been right.
If they come back and they hadn't got, that's why I said after the Man United game too, that was big for them, because that was the first time they'd had a week of kind of training with lots of.
I'm delighted. I'm so
players.
pleased for him. I'm so pleased.
I think
it happens so rarely in life. It's so nice, isn't it? It's so great.
I think we say
Don't get ahead of yourself, Tom.
Spurs fans are focused on the 2 centre backs coming back, but from Saturday it looks like they really need Solanke back because Tell can't play up front on his own. Okay. So they really need a focal point. Somewhere along. I mean, as much as like you said, Tom, Son played and played well, but they need a sort of a centre forward really.
Yeah. I did enjoy that 4th goal.
Brennan Johnson too, though. I mean,
Super Brennan, former Lincoln legend. Yep.
Always gets in the goals. Always gets in goal scoring. Always just kind of. Sometimes he just stands still in the box. People always look for a clever run. He just comes out at the back post, stands still, hands in the air. Literally stands there with his hands in the air. He's done that multiple times this season.
On the second goal.
Somebody's there, boom, last goal.
It was very much that on the second goal. So can you not see me, Son? And he sort of did cross. But I think there was an interesting point in the second. Son was quite good in the first half. He got by, and Ipswich are terrible at the back. But I mean, he got by and he crossed. But there's a point in the second half where Tottenham were breaking and Son just couldn't keep up. And you think, he can probably do it for a certain period, but after that maybe he can't. And he's also played a lot of games, so Ange is definitely going to have to kind of rotate them all a little bit. I think also credit to Spence, because say he did well a few years ago in the Championship. You probably would have seen him a lot more than that. And then perhaps his attitude around the place and training is not what it should be. And he's changed, and he's kind of changed his game. He's played right back on Saturday, first time since Boxing Day, and then moved to left back when Porro came on. maybe Tuchel looks at him and think maybe he's an outsider for the England squad. You don't know, and Maddison did a nice little trick. He's obviously talking about wanting to be in the England squad. So suddenly that actually, and Archie Gray, who first 15 minutes to lap really bullied him, but after that he adapted to it and he used his strength to push the lap away, and he's obviously a real player in Bergvall. So they've actually got quite a few really younger players who maybe in a year's time are going to look really good. They remind me a little bit, and I would say a little bit of Arsenal after their new stadium, when they built their stadium, and Wenger had to sign lots of young players to kind of cope with the finances. But at some point, those young players get frustrated because Arsenal never won, and they then moved on. The Fabregas, Nasri, and I think Tottenham have got to be quite clever about ensuring that this group stay here.
They look quite loyal to Ange, though.
Yeah,
don't
they do.
Yeah,
And I
they
think
look like they're playing. But they look like they're playing for him.
Yeah, they've got Ange tattoos and stuff.
You haven't you? No, but I mean, because I was listening to you then, Gary. Ange said himself, didn't he, when he was under most pressure, and you guys were going to press conferences and going, "Oh, you're off, aren't you, Ange? This is not looking good." And he was like, "Well, if in a few years, whoever the manager is, whether it's me or someone else, they'll have a really good group of players."
And
you talk about Archie Gray gets bullied for 15 minutes, but then comes through the emergence of Spence, Brennan Johnson, Bergvall, all these players, Gregor. This is why I'm delighted for him. This could be the greatest rom-com turnaround in all of football.
And they must look at the Europa League and think the route to the final isn't that difficult.
Yeah.
I think, in the start of the season, you looked at it, West Ham got to the semi-final Europa League, got to the final of Conference League, did pretty well again in Europa League the season after, and West Ham weren't anywhere near Tottenham's level, and Tottenham must look at this competition and think, we are the best team in it, pretty much.
There we go, Tottenham fans. Come on, we believe in it. I'm absolutely
Spence
here
is
for
a great story, isn't he?
It's a great.
I'm loving it more by every. Because this is the first
emergence.
time he's played right back. I said when the doggy's fit, Porro should be looking over his shoulder. In fairness, I would say this was a rest because Porro's played a lot of football as well.
Played a lot of football.
But I think he should be looking over his shoulder because Spence has been outstanding. Got his goal, and from what he's had a kind of complicated career. He had a kind of hybrid scholarship at Fulham. He didn't even get offered a full scholarship. Then he was let go and he went up to Middlesbrough, showed real potential, got in the team. Then Warnock said to him, you'll either be in non-league or you'll be in the Premier League. It's up to you, son, which obviously suggests something about his attitude and bits and bobs. And he's admitted he's probably matured. And he was completely dead and buried at Spurs. He'd been there since, 2022? Been out on loans. He was shunned out to Genoa. They had an option, $8.5 million option. Didn't take it up. Came back, still out in the cold. Injuries have got him an opportunity. And you go, wow, look at this player. He's I think he's one of the first names in the team sheet now.
For Tottenham or England?
For Tottenham, but I think England is absolutely a possibility now.
Interesting.
But isn't this discussion a little bit like, your kid fails maths, fails English, GCSE.
Go away.
And then they get an A star.
No, get out.
They get an A
Neil,
star in
kill the
art.
mic. Kill her
and
mic.
So the parents go to every dinner party saying, I think we've unearthed an artistic genius.
Oh my God,
she's
I'm not
going to get to university, but we don't believe in university because she's an artistic genius.
Is this someone who was on your holiday in Lanzarote that you're annoyed about? We need to talk about this holiday afterwards. No one comes back from a holiday in this much of a bad mood.
They're still
It's
in
not
a
praise.
rubbish position in the table. They have been mismanaged through most of the crises that have hit Spurs. I don't think he deserves the loving he's getting around this table.
I'm not giving him loads of praise. I'm just saying I'm pleased.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about Ange at all. That was just about Spence.
Yeah,
I think your point about that. I think Porro is he's a much better crosser of the ball, and I think they do miss that sort of thing. So whether they'd be interested in what happens who's going to play if they're all fit. How's he going to play them? But I agree, it's a good. Spencer's a good story. And I suppose to go to your part, I think you made a very.
You
good
don't
point.
have to go to her point.
No, I think you made a good point.
Thank you, Gary.
The slot changed, hasn't he, at various points in the season, and just been quite belligerent. This is me, and this is what I do, and
that's
tough.
not why you employ someone.
Well, that's what Alison would want. Slot to do.
Yeah, but Alison doesn't want you, Arnie Slot, but she hates Ange Postecoglou as well. Oh man, Alison, let's see if she's okay with us praising
hate's a strong word.
Crystal Palace. Can we give them some praise? Maybe is that allowed?
Yeah, what an away record.
What an away record. One of the most potentially underrated teams and maybe the most under-discussed team on this podcast
Do you
all
reckon?
season. Yeah, I'd say so. I've not, unlike my former footballer I've not got a list of minutes discussed. Tottenham and Ange Postecoglou would definitely be up there. Crystal Palace would not be. Gregor, you were there to watch them beat Fulham. An example of the final theme for the show today, the bonkers mid-table that we're all going to have to get excited about now. But Gregor, tell us about this game and this win for Palace.
Yeah, it was another great away performance, and like Fulham, after beating Forest and Newcastle, you know, I think they could have gone a point shy of Bournemouth if they'd won this game. They didn't have a shot on target. Like Jimenez I put in my report, he had a 95th minute header that was the tamest header you've ever seen, and I don't think they even registered it as a shot. That was like, they had nothing.
Was that
And
Fulham bad or Palace good?
A bit of both, but I think Palace good is what you have to say. You watch this team play the 3-4-2-1. This formation that everyone hears so much about in relation to Amarin and Man United, and you go, oh my God, this is how it should work. This is how it should work. They have three centre halves who are really like big, powerful, and have pace. You need pace because you have to be able to run the channels and cover each other. And Lacroix has been one of the signings of the season. He's been absolutely outstanding. They obviously sold Joachim Andersen to Fulham in the summer. There was eyebrows raised about that, 30 million. Now they got a player for 10 million less, 4 years younger at 24 years old, and I think they've now realised it's an upgrade. So completely forgotten about Anderson, who happened to score an own goal in this game. And the shape is just like, with Eze, Ismail Sarr has like really grown into that position as well, with one of the number 10s alongside Eze. Mateta leads the line brilliantly. Munoz took the goal fantastically, and even Tyreek Mitchell has kind of grown as an attacking force as well. And Will Hughes and Lerma kind of they're good passers of the ball. They're not like uber creative, but they're good at like breaking up play and giving it to someone who's better than them, usually Eze. And it works.
So if you're a Man United fan who can't understand what Ruben Amorim's trying to do, you're saying you should go and watch a Palace game.
I still think there's you should watch it, but I still think there's a question that James Gearbrand kind of alluded to in his column about Iraola and this sort of disruptor football almost, and whether it's ever going to work at a club of Man United stature, because it is a formation and a shape that sort of lends itself to being really compact and then being really dangerous on the break, and like the second goal kind of alluded to that. You know, it's good at kind of closing space as a formation, and then if you've got the right players, breaking quickly. Having said that, there were periods where they kept possession really well, but the defense has been the remarkable turnaround. They didn't win for 9 games in the Premier League. It was an awful start to the season, and now their away record, they've won 5 games in a row, 2-0.
Yeah,
and no one was panicking though in that run as well.
No,
there was no panic.
They did a lot of their transfer business really late in the window. It was like Glasner was saying that. I think he was a bit upset about that actually. But you know, having lost Elise, the whole kind of saga around Mark Gahey as well. But you know, Newcastle wanted him. So when the window shut and they managed to settle down within a couple of weeks, you saw the real Crystal Palace again, the Palace we saw at the end of last season. And he brought up a year in charge. He's an outstanding tactician, really intelligent coach. You can see that in the way the team play. I think they're another team that are like an ambitious sort of member of this growing middle class in the Premier League now.
They would be higher if they sort of took their chances against Everton last week. They had chances to kind of win that, they didn't take it. And I think if you watch their games and when the ones they've drawn or lost, they have had chances to have taken it, or they've made mistakes. It's just it's those small little details that maybe that efficiency football, which other teams do far much better than they haven't got. And Mateta's astonishing for a guy who a few years ago could not score when he first arrives, and then now he's one of the best forwards in terms of leading the line in that sole role.
Yeah,
He
really
scores.
sad his goal.
Oh, no, yeah.
The back heel from Eze.
What an assist.
Guti-esque. Like,
He's so underrated, isn't he, Mateta, in terms of what he does for that team.
Absolutely.
You know, people don't even look at him really.
That must be down to Glasner as well, though, right? Giving him that confidence and purpose within a role.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think also, you raised the point about the transfer window. So many years ago, when sort of Tony Pulis was there, he kind of chucked his toys out the pram in exactly the same way, because Steve Parish does the deals on the last day, so that the managers do get frustrated there that the deals come in, but everyone's trying to look for a deal on the last day, and so I think that's kind of, if you go there as a manager, you've just got to kind of deal with that.
Brought on Adam Wharton, who's returned as well, has been out for a long time after groin surgery. Ben Chilwell came on. who's going off to competition with Mitchell. They look like I think they could continue to climb the table.
And they lost Chalobah in January as well. So
and Richard just stepped in brilliantly. So yeah, they're going along really well.
Yeah, Fulham as you say, beating Newcastle, beating Forest, and then this. It was the same for Bournemouth, defeat against Wolves. Well done, Wolves fans, a big win. But I'm bringing up this game because I wanted to quickly ask Gregor about his interview with. We've just talked about the most underrated team in the Premier League. Now it's time to talk about the most underrated player in the Premier League. Gregor, who did you meet?
Bournemouth's Ryan Christie.
Bournemouth's Ryan Christie.
Yeah.
And that was the headline we stuck on the piece. And a lot of readers were agreeing with you.
Yeah, there's
a particular stat, isn't there, that we're basing this on?
He's won one possession more than any player in Europe's top 5 leagues this season. And he's obviously, when Iraola came in, Christie was a winger, been a winger or a number 10 for most of his career at Celtic, started at Cali Thistle, Aberdeen. Came to Bournemouth when they were in the Championship, didn't pull up any trees in the Championship. Iraola spotted something, thought he said, "Can you play number 8?" And he said, "Like, I just, new manager came in, nodded like a nodding dog." He's like, "Yes, sir, yes." And the rest is history. It's his reading of the game, and because the way Bournemouth press, we've spoken about this a long time, a lot of times. The way they press is really aggressive, really, so on the front foot, and about hemming the opposition in and kind of pressing triggers. And there was the recognition is spread, and there was a segment on Monday Night Football last month where they after the 4-1 win against Newcastle, when Jamie Carragher and I think it was Manu Petit spent the whole 5-minute time they spoke about this game talking about Ryan Christie, because he was the one who recognised when to go, and then he also had to cover back in to kind of drop back into midfield. He was doing like a sort of hybrid role, and he was so important for them, and he won the ball 9 times in that game. And for a team like Bournemouth, who are set up primarily to be a danger without the ball, the guy who wins it back most for them is priceless. And he was really good company as well. It was a bit of a leap of faith, he admitted, to come down to Bournemouth when they were in the Championship, and to see where they are now. And he's one of the most important players. It's been well vindicated.
And he's Scottish as well, Alison. Scottish
and
friends.
His dad.
Yes, this is a great
fact. Played for
fact.
Cali Thistle in the famous shock victory against Celtic when Super Cali went ballistic. Celtic were atrocious. He got man of the match, and he said his dad's champagne's still there, and he'll probably be buried with it. Yeah. It's still in his house.
It is. It was a lovely, lovely interview, and there's a great picture of Gregor and Ryan Christie laughing along like good pals in it as well. He's got a new best mate, and he might just be Scottish, who knows. But that final segment of the show sums up the bonkers and brilliance of the middle of the table, everyone. Liverpool are 11 points clear, but there's 11 points between Manchester City in 4th and Palace in 13th. So with the top of the table done, bottom of the table likely done, as Gregor says, it's time to get excited about what's going on in the middle, and that's what we'll be getting excited about for the rest of the season. But we'll leave it there for today. Alison Rudd, Gary Jacob and Gregor Robertson, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for listening too. We'll be back with that EFL show and the regular show on Thursday. We'll see you then.